you so much for being here. This is part of the Labor to End Slavery in Minnesota campaign. We are working to end slavery in Minnesota in our prisons. As you may know, slavery is legal in our prisons under the Minnesota Constitution and the federal Constitution. And today we have three amazing panelists to talk about that. Our moderator, Marcia Howard, she's the president of the Minneapolis Federation of Teachers, and an active community member in all ways and all forms. Bridget Burrell, formerly incarcerated in Shakopee Prison, and is here to tell what that is like and the truth, and was also part of organizing behind bars, as when it was Aaron Ernst, but not in Shakopee Prison. So excited for you to talk to these folks, to hear this conversation, and to have a collective conversation about how we as part of the labor movement are working to make sure that people with the lowest legal wages in the state are part of that movement and are part of that change. And I'll pass it to our colleague.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that y'all are here, especially this late in the evening, even though it's 6 o'clock, but it feels late to me. I've had a full work day, and I'm thinking about labor, and I'm thinking about work. And I think about our brothers and sisters and our siblings that are incarcerated right now. And you don't know if they just got off work or just going to work. You don't know when their work day start and when their work day end. Back in the day, I have relatives who have been incarcerated, and they say they work from can to can't, from can see to can't see. My name is Marcia Howard. I am the president of the teacher chapter of Minneapolis Federation of Teachers. I've been an educator since 1998 as an English teacher at Roosevelt High School, but I'm on release as a president. And I need y'all to understand that language is powerful. So when we say we want to end slavery in Minnesota, I need you to understand how them words hit. So the question that we have is, why are we using the term ending slavery in Minnesota prisons? Do you have an idea?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got a lot of ideas. Many people end up in prison for many different reasons, and the reasons are, really important, but for this conversation, not important, because the difference between the fence is nothing. Those are human beings on that side of the fence. There are human beings on this side of the fence. There's community on that side of the fence. There's community on this side. And most of the people on that side of the fence are going to be returning. And so if we want them to be successful in their transition, they need to become part of this community on this side. And how do we do that? By getting them caught up on the same level playing field as everybody else. Their labor is being stolen from them. And I think that's what we're talking about when we talk about slavery. Free labor is how you build a booming economy. The United States economy grew extremely fast when you had 4 million free labor. And in the DOC, you've got able-bodied workers learning trades and not being able to profit off of their labor. And we'll go into more in a little bit, but that's a problem. If slavery is wrong, it's wrong for everybody.
Say that.
It's wrong for regular people, it's wrong for incarcerated people, it's wrong for young people, it's wrong for old people, it's wrong for white people or black people, So I think there's a different way to punish people or to have punitive consequences for actions. But wage theft and labor theft is not acceptable.
We say ending slavery in Minnesota. Although I'm the president of teacher chapter of Minneapolis Federation of Teachers, I'm also at George Floyd Square. We got in trouble because we keep calling the murder of George Floyd a lynching. And some folks got real sensitive about that, because when you say lynching, they have an image in their head of what actually happened. But if you look up a lynching and see the legal definition of a lynching, you see that it's a killing by those forces right? In order to strike terror in all the folks around it, right? It's an extrajudicial killing. So what happened was a lynching. And now we call it what's happening in our prisons slavery, which frankly, under the 13th Amendment, is legal. And frankly, under the Minnesota Constitution, is in fact legal. So why do we call this ending slavery in Minnesota, in your opinion? Why do we insist on calling it slavery?
That's exactly what it is, slavery. If you're getting, back in the day, out in the fields, I think they got a couple of pennies for their labor for all day. You can work from sun up to sundown, and that's exactly what you got, a couple of pennies. And that's exactly what they're giving you in the prison. You work from sun up, dark. When you get off, it's dark, and you're getting a couple of pennies. So we're dependent on the outside to take care of us. So that's why, it's still considered slavery, because it's still branching from our history.
I got a question. You say you working from sun up to sundown and you getting pennies.
Mm-hmm.
How much does an incarcerated worker make?
From 25 to 50 cents an hour. And then they split it in half.
Wait. 25 to 50 cents an hour
Yes.
and then split in half.
Yes.
Can you explain further why it's split?
Well, they take half of it and they put it towards your confinement. So they're charging you to stay there, although the state is paying for you to stay there, but you're paying for your room, your lighting, your water, with your fees, with your check.
If you did not work during your sentence,
You're punished.
Oftentimes, yes. You're punished. You can be sent to the hole. You can be sent to segregation. It's coercive. It's coercive programming. I think is what they call it. If you're in a working unit or like a Faribault or somewhere like that, that they expect you to have a job or be in school or be in treatment. So one of those, and all of them are coercive, because if you have a treatment mandate, you're going to treatment. If you choose not to do one of those things, then you go to segregation, which is another traumatic experience besides the trauma of incarceration to begin with, where you're isolated within isolation. And I think studies have shown that this type of punishment or treatment has long-term effects. Now we're going to sing karaoke.
Sing.
maybe the other way. All right.
Can you hear me?
Let's see.
Let's see. We will test it.
All right, can you hear me?
No.
No.
A little bit louder.
Try it again.
Test. Mic wasn't on.
Okay then.
Give me an error. So in what she was talking about as far as them taking half, it doesn't really stop there, because once you are working, you're no longer able to get what they call indigent supplies. So that means everything that you need, just like if you were on the street, everything that you need, you're paying for. You're paying for your deodorant, you're paying for your shoes, you're paying for your toothpaste, you're paying for your, not the toilet paper, thankfully, but everything else that you would pay for in your home, we're expected to do as well on a fraction of what they're paying people in sweatshops.
And the labor is plentiful. I mean, you always have a job. They're gonna make sure that you work. And one thing that we didn't mention is when you do get your check can range from $12, if that, and you're expected to, like he said, buy all of your belongings. So you're spending every penny plus more to, just to supply yourself.
What type of labor do you do while you're incarcerated? Now, this is Minnesota, And I will be frank, there are many, many people in my family that have been in prison. That is not a point of pride, but nor is it a point of shame. After emancipation, not for nothing, many, many laws were created to put people that look like me in prison. The laws that we have around loitering, for instance, laws that we now call ... while black, because they did not want to give up their free labor. And so they made a cottage industry into an industrialized prison complex that is now for profit. But I'm going to get off Arkansas and come back to the Faribaults and the Shakopees. All right?
Yes.
What kind of work do they have you doing in a place such as those?
Well, in prison, the inmates run the whole prison, from groundkeeping to cooking, to cleaning the kitchen, dishwashing, cleaning the units. Everything that's labor in there is done by the inmates. We run the prison. We just have guards watching over us, making sure it's done right. But other than that, the prisoners run the prison. We clean everything. We cut grass. We pick flowers. We wash walls. I mean, everything. The units we clean. They don't have people from the outside coming in to do no labor. We do all of that. You have any?
Yeah, and it changes at the different levels that you're at. So I've never been to the high ones, but there's different jobs in Stillwater or Rush City. They might have sewing and stuff, the textile up in Moose Lake. So they have a whole industry just around that where they make the clothes for the DOC, all those things. Then Faribault also has anagram where you're standing in one spot folding balloons.
Anagram is prison made.
Anagram is prison made. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they have quotas to make. So if you don't make your quota, you can be fired. You can be let go. The hours on those are like 12-hour shifts. I mean, I couldn't do an hour of it, so I didn't go. But there are different jobs at different levels. The last time I was there, I made it down to minimum. And minimum is really kind of where the theft of labor just hit me hard. They have a program called ICWIC. Now, when you go out to minimum, you're like, I don't know if I want to do ICWIC. They're like, no, you're doing ICWIC. Here's your crew. It's supposed to be a voluntary thing, but at Lino Lakes, it was mandatory. You're on this crew, you're on that crew, you're on this crew. And what it is that the DOC contracts with cities and municipalities and the Department of Transportation. And the Department of Transportation, City of Shoreview, where I work, they pay the DOC, I don't know how much, we're trying to figure that out, per hour for our labor, like a temporary or staffing agency. And then we do the job, we do the exact same job, literally in Shoreview, as the Park and Rec people. Sometimes I'm with this guy from the Park and Rec, we're over here doing mulching or cutting grass, and we're doing things for a very rich, a very well-off city, and we helped build this $10 million, I think it was 10 million, I might be exaggerating, park for kids. It was crazy. I wanted to play there. It was awesome, but that was a lot of labor that went into that they got for nothing. On top of that, the DOC gives us $1 an hour. And so the funny part for me was when I asked him if I could apply when I got out, just to see, because I didn't like the work, but just to see if they would hire me. He said, well, yeah, you got to do a background check, and if you have these, this, that, and the third, you can't work here. And I was like, wait, so when I'm incarcerated, when my labor is free, when you can exploit me, I'm your man. I can work here. I'm acceptable. But the minute you can't exploit me, the minute you have to pay me the value of my service, well, sorry, you are a felon, and that's when it hit, like, wow.
all of this brings back the echoes of pre-emancipation. It brings back antebellum times when, after Black folks got free, we might not have been able to read, but the one thing we did have was skill. And when we, by the millions, were freed, we were competing with unskilled labor. And they got mad. They got mad. Because all this skilled labor was unleashed upon the world, upon this nation. And so this big lie about us being lazy and criminal was perpetuated. And so they did slavery by another name in that 13th Amendment, which ensured that no one would be compelled to work in bondage except after the commission of a crime as punishment for a crime. Now, 8 other states have taken that language out of their constitutions, but Minnesota has not. That we are now, even though we're in the North, mind you, I'm from Arkansas, we have not taken that out of our Constitution. But you also made me think, because I'm a labor girly. They had folk making union folk compete, right, with Department of Correction workers, right? And sometimes, y'all need to watch this, our union brethren and sistren and siblinging might have an issue when they come out. Not just in Minnesota, you'll see it in California. They can fight firefighters and put their lives on the line. But when they come out, can they get a job on a crew? But let's talk about while they're incarcerated. What about their work? What about your work while you're in there? If they had to hire people to do the things that you're doing for y'all, because you ain't got to do nothing, I'm sorry, y'all, but stay black and die. If you are in the prison that they're forcing you to be in, all you are supposed to do is exist and do your time. If they had hired people to do that job, how much you think they get paid? Think of a job and how much it would pay.
Oh, they're gonna pay them what they pay them out here. They're gonna get full pay if they come from the outside to come inside to do our job, and the inmate's job.
Yes, ma'am.
Of course, they're gonna get full pay because what we're doing in there is work. Real labor. So although we're not getting the pay, we're doing real hardcore work.
One thing I was just thinking about too is that sometimes the argument is, well, you're in there, you should work, you should take care of that place, and we're taxpayers are paying for it, and it's like, wait a minute. At the same time, these places don't run themselves.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to take the budget and take the inmate workers out of the equation, it might bankrupt Minnesota. I don't know what the Minnesota budget is. I guess we got a surplus. It probably wouldn't. But we're talking an exponential increase in that budget from $800 million to $100 million. I want my money, and I want it now. For real. When you think about that, that's crazy.
You say you want your money, but as a sister and a niece and a daughter and a cousin, as a woman that have had to put money on folk books, like I like to keep my money, shit,
Right. Yes.
that is taking money.
From the family.
You done already took a family. We paying in one way and then we continue to pay. That don't make no sense.
Yes.
So how does that work?
Oh, they make them pay too. So when a family do send you money from the outside, they gotta pay for sending you money on their end and on the inside. They're taking a percentage of whatever gets sent in there from your family. Yes.
Okay, nobody ever told me that.
And they contract. They contract with the whatever software or with whatever whatever company it is, whether it be JPay or whatnot. And so when you send money in, JPay has the contract with the DOC. So JPay takes $9.99 from your credit card deposit, and then the DOC takes $9.99. You know what I mean? So when you send in 100, we get 80. It's a 20% cut, period, on your money, not my money. That's your money. So, I mean, you're stealing labor, you're stealing fees, you know, the junk fees, and the whole thing just keeps going because nobody listens and the voice of the incarcerated is washed away and is dismissed because our country has been conditioned to, oh, well, they're less than, they are unworthy, they are, you know, the shunned and the untouchables, you know? And so the theft just keeps on going and the wheel keeps grinding. But one more thing about paying inmate workers and things like that. Think of the amount of child support that can be had. I was in for a number of years, and I think about had I been earning even minimum wage and paying that child support, that would have bumped my daughter's life up like a tax bracket and a half. That, for some people, that's taking literally kids out of poverty. We talk about it, you know, loving the kids, we want to help the kids and stuff like that, but that would literally change the lives and change the trajectory of so many kids in this state.
I think the prison system is nothing but a big racketeer case to me. And the recidivism, however you say that word, is crazy because they design, that's why they underpay. You're gonna go out there and you're gonna come back because you have no way of surviving. So you're gonna go out there, you're gonna commit a crime, and you will be back to help us. So I, just being on the inside, I learned that it's just a big racketeer circle.
It's even more pernicious than that. You plant a seed in our dark soil and you water it in our, you water it in our tears, right? And our fears and our family who's doing without. And knowing that the fruit that it bears will be our children who have done without. And maybe they are hoping they can pluck that like the generations of slaves that they had before. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. Every human being that has made a mistake or a misstep did not stumble so that their entire bloodline would suffer. And yet this system is set up that there seems no digging out of that. You can't even work hard enough within that system to save your twos and fews. Imagine you lived in a world where you saved every single check you earned. You didn't even spend it. I need you to do a thought exercise for anybody who has ever been incarcerated. I want you to think you saved that entire year, now 2 years, now 3 years, now 4 years, Now, 5 years, you've been there, you thought of it your last 5 years, and you gonna walk out them doors.
1,600.
How much are you gonna have when you walk out?
Probably 1,600. I mean, if you saved every dime, which you can't, because you'll stink and you'll get beat up, or whatever, you will go hungry.
What's the amount of money again?
Maybe 1,600 after 5 years. I don't know.
$1,600. $1,600. 5 years of your life, and that is why we call it slavery. I don't want to hear relativism. I don't want to hear in another nation $1,600 is a lot of money. I don't want to hear it. I got shoes that cost that much money. I got art that I want to buy that costs more money that I'm serious about. I'm looking at an art gallery owner over here. Holla at me. 5 years of a grown man's life, of all the labor of their hands, $1,600 to show for it. Do you know how much it costs for a woman, well-bred, with nice teeth, in 1862 in South Carolina?
How much?
You could get 1,600. You can get her for 1,600. And that was equivalent to about $25,000, $30,000. And that was a tool that they were buying. It was an investment. There was a joke amongst our people that if you were so poorly formed that they could buy you by the dozen, which is why we have a joke when we make fun of each other. We call it the dozens. I want y'all to think about this free labor, or damn near free labor.
Free labor.
Yeah. How can labor play a role? Labor in ending that constitutional little carve out in Minnesota. Minnesota prides itself on being on the right side of history in so many things. How can we push to be on the right side of history in ending slavery in Minnesota? I want y'all to think about it. What can we do? And making sure that prison workers get their rights as workers. What do you want us to do?
Actually, I would like to hear David answer this one. Because that was pretty big. I don't know where we start. We have to come together. The only thing I can think of is we have to fight tooth and nail. We have to come together. Stand strong, and without coming together, it can't happen. I don't think. You have to force and push. That's the only thing I can think of.
We can get organized, and we can talk to our legislature. We can talk to our senators. We can talk to our congressmen. We can go to Capitol Hill when they're having days on the Hill for agriculture. I don't care what the day on the Hill is. We can get up there, knock on the doors, and make our voices heard. We can set appointments and go out to coffee and go out to dinner with other constituents from from your area, and get a movement going amongst yourself. Coordinate with IWOC and some of these other organizations that are doing the work on the ground every day. And on top of that, you can talk to your union members, because when you talk to your congressman and then he talks to his congressman and you're in different districts, we're getting a bigger, we're getting more visibility. We're getting a bigger voice heard in the state, because it's going to take not just the city senators and representatives. It's going to take that rural area, which means our reach needs to be long and needs to be wide. It takes a lot more to convince our fellow Minnesotans from other areas that are as close to diversity as the people in the Twin Cities are. So we need a little more time and more reach. And so speak to your unions and get them on board. See if they'll endorse this campaign, because that says something to the congressmen, to the representatives there. Hey, wait a minute. Oh, your whole union is about this? You know, it's more than one voice. It's a fist.
I'd love to hear. We got a lot of union people here, so I want to know what y'all think. You know
Yeah,
what I
we
mean?
gonna open
Y'all
it up.
are union people, but I would just say, so we do have the bill that is called the Bill to End Slavery in Minnesota. We do have bill sponsors, and we do have policy language, which is that it would end forced labor in correctional facilities by reclassifying prisoners as workers with the right to employment. So those 8 other states, including Alabama, that have ended slavery in the Constitution, that's helped this many people in prison. Because they said, oh, it's a mandatory rehabilitative work program. So what we've learned from the very hard work of people around the country is we have to specify what is the status of people in prison. And that's why we want to specify it as workers. And that's why we need unions to help us do that. And, you know, it's similar, you know, minimum, you know, the state can set a higher minimum wage even though they can pay the federal minimum wage out here, right? It's legal under the Minnesota Constitution. We do want to change that language to enslave people in prison. But we can also pass a law without changing the Constitution. And so we think that that's the easier path first, if that makes sense. And that's also the path that allows people to have all the other rights that workers have, if you know what I mean. And that's pretty important. And it's also something we really need y'all to tell us, like, how can labor help? How can we partner? What's going, you know what I mean?
I am going to want to open it up. We're going to want to open this up to the audience. One thing that strikes me is that I've been in the Midwest for about 30 years, and there's something about the Midwest Protestant work ethic that sort of might tie into this, where they think that if you are in prison, as you touched on, that it's good for the soul to work, and they're not tying that in the compulsory nature or the coercive nature of being forced to work, and you're not helping your family, you're not able to help your family, and the fact that you're going to wind up coming back to prison. That's not helping anybody. It's not rehabilitation. It's not. So then, how then do we get our Midwest labor counterparts to sort of snap out of that mind frame? Those of us that are in labor unions, what then must we do? How do we bring this to their attention?
I suppose you could map out what products and services are being done by people, and then go to the unions that would otherwise be doing that work and explain to them that literally this is undercutting our own wages. If someone's building a park, that's tradesmen and tradeswomen who would otherwise be building that park, public workers would be building that park. Now, LIUNA would probably have something to say about that if attention is brought to it. I think it gets overlooked too often.
Is this time, so this is just a question on the campaign. So is this like, so if this were to pass, would this open the door to being able to unionize, like within, and then push for further, like rights and being able to join different, like for instance, like you got IUNA or different unions and folks who are outside, like there could be could there be the potential for people to be incarcerated, be unionized as well, and join, you know what I'm trying to say? I'm sorry, I don't know how to
That's a great idea. Somebody was just talking.
They
Yeah,
incarcerated
that's definitely
AFT.
one of the goals. And
Yeah,
one
If
of
you're a licensed teacher inside, actually, we do have teachers that are in the prison system, not incarcerated, but they teach within prison. But what if somebody did get their licensure?
That's what I mean, like being
I don't
able
know
to
if that's
bridge
possible,
these
but-
divides between workers who are incarcerated and workers on the outside.
So currently, it's against DOC policy, but not law, right? It's against
I don't
DOC
know.
policy to unionize, and
Oh.
it's a high violation. It's not like smoking weed or something like that. It's up there. It's a risk code violation, and they send you up to another prison higher. And because they're so scared of that, people getting unified in prison. You know?
So because you can't get unified because they look at those as gangs growing within the prison, then if you get hurt on the job, who covers your wage for that day? Even if it's 50 cents an hour.
The wage?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're not getting the wage
You just
if you left and went to medical.
Can I say, that's crazy. There's a special process. I have a friend who, a rafter fell out of prison and permanently damaged him. And you're exempt from the workman's comp laws. And so there's a special committee on the legislature that meets once a year that you have to appeal to, and it's just random ass legislators. And the state, of course, is the only one, I mean, you write your letter, right? And the state writes their letter. And who do you think they go with every time?
Wait, if you get hurt on the job,
That's the change right there.
if you get hurt on the job,
That's the change.
mind you, my husband got hurt on the job and lost both legs. If you get hurt on the job,
You get nothing.
you
have to go through a special review process that's not going in.
That's the start right there. How many have been hurt and got nothing?
Yeah.
In addition to that, if it's a job or you pay taxes.
Oh, we've gotten hurt with chainsaws out cutting trees
You don't,
and stuff
pay
like that.
taxes on that day?
Yeah.
Oh, you do pay taxes.
So they pay taxes on the $7 a day.
$7. What is that?
I mean, I'm saying.
I finna say,
it's a
what-
job.
wait, do y'all pay taxes on your
I
income?
thought it was only
Yeah.
$1 an hour.
Do we?
Yeah, you do.
They tax
Oh, okay.
them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Fight
taxing
somebody
me every
so
time
bad.
I get my check.
So, what is that money? So are you able to file taxes at the end of the year on that? No.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, you can. Most of us
No,
don't.
you better not file taxes when
There you
you,
go.
because,
That's why-
when you leave, see, when you are incarcerated, your social security number does not belong to you. Technically, what happens is that you locked up, and then in October of every year, the government files taxes because they get money for you. And then if you file their taxes, everybody does that first month of April, and if you file them taxes, oh, I got some money back. But reality is, it'll catch up with you later, because your social security number has been given to the Department of Corrections when you're locked up.
So they're saying you're their dependent.
You're there, and then they give you back your social security number when you get out. See, I was in the feds, and the feds do that. Now, I'm pretty sure it happens in the state, because state is a little bit different when it comes to, but you're still a part of the Department of Corrections. Nothing, you better not have no taxes done.
There's an article on Unicorn Riot.
Unicorn.
It's called Why Can't I File My Taxes? It speaks
Yeah.
to this issue.
Oh, wow.
So we were, Unicorn guys was working it, and they were trying to file their taxes and eventually caught up with them.
I'm incredibly frustrated. I'm sorry. It's a good frustrated because once you know, then you know how to attack this. And these are some very good angles, because if you can't go through the front door, then we'll go through the damn coal room. We'll go through the back. We'll go through the side. We'll go through the attic. We'll go through the chimney. We'll go through whatever we need to do. There are angles that we can use as labor and as community in order to tackle some of this, especially now in 2025.
I think one solution would be to reform the laws and the statutes in Minnesota. I'm currently involved in an effort to reform part of a law that's permanently disqualified me from certain work because of a criminal offense I had 50 years ago. And it happened in another state. So the Institute for Justice is provided me with a lawyer. There are not many people that come out. I know people got the same story that I have, okay? But there are not many people. There are some legislators that that are sponsoring our suggestion, but we need more people involved. I was talking with a senator, and I can't call his name, and he blurted out that this was a workforce issue. And I had to think about that, because for 30 years, I've worked with the same constituents that I'm barred from working with now. I've lost 4 jobs because DHS does a background check that goes back 50 years and says, now you can't work with this population.
Hmm.
So there's something inherently wrong with that. It's not just. Particularly, you know, if you learned a skill, there are guys and by the way, I've worked in every prison in the state. I taught a parenting program. Lionel Lakes, Oak Park Heights, everyone. Now I can't work with that population. So there's something inherently wrong with that. And it is a workforce issue. Because I refuse to give up. I refuse to go get another job, a menial job, because I can't do what I love to do or what I've been taught to do. And I was in prison in a time when it was rehabilitation. I went to college. I didn't work. I worked for a short time, but things were different then. But 50 years ago, you hold it against someone? It doesn't make sense. So I think you fight them with the same thing that they use to keep us down. And that is the law, the statutes.
Also, I think you were talking about changing the way people think, and that's exactly what needs to happen too. We need to change the way that we think about people that are incarcerated. Individuals who are experiencing the criminal justice system negatively we need to shape that differently in our minds and help shape other people's minds. And unions could really help by creating, a pipeline from prison to union, going up to the prison, interviewing people there before they get out so they have a job when they walk out the gate. That helps with that transition, that helps with the successful reentry. And just, it helps normalize these people that are marginalized, and we think of them differently. Now they're just, oh yeah, that's the guy Tim was gonna bring around, and it makes it normal, and it makes that transition smooth.
We're not the crime that you committed, who knows what the circumstances were? Broke, drug addicted, doesn't matter. But that's not who the person is that's in prison. My stepdad was in prison for many years. I used to go to Stillwater and visit him when they had the open room.
Yep.
The vending machines, the guard was at home. I was a little girl, I went to his probation, when I was a senior in high school, I went to his probation officer to plead for him because he's such a good man. And I guess his file is about like that thick. He was a two-bit criminal. He shortchanged, 3-card Molly, street. He said, why are you dealing with this person? I said, because that's my dad and I love him. It's my stepdad. I love this man. He raised me. So now he's sober. We've been sober 17 years. He's 79 years old. He's going to be 80 in May. So he has a place to live, but he wants to have his record expunged. He doesn't want to die with that shit on his back. So we are not our crime.
I have a girlfriend that she did 5 years in Shakopee, and when she got out, she was disabled, so she applied for Social Security. So Social Security told her that she didn't have no work history, although she worked there 5 years. She had no work history, so her credit was unaccounted for. So she had to go under, I guess this not disability Social Security, but it's this one where you just get the less money. Yeah, something, yeah. SSI. So she had to go under SSI instead of her disability where she can get her full benefits. And that's crazy. And she told them, well, I worked 5 years in prison. It didn't count.
They pay taxes, but you don't pay social security tax. You don't pay workers' comp tax, unemployment tax, none of that. I don't understand how that system can even work.
It keeps us out of those benefits.
But it goes back to, knowledge. Getting that knowledge, understand. I didn't know they take your social security.
But it
They're
also,
basically just writing you a check.
it also goes back to 3/5 of a person, right?
Say that one more time.
3/5 of a person.
Absolutely.
It's so, thinking about this as union folk, like the ethic of solidarity with all workers is something that is it's a theme throughout the unionized work. I'm thinking specifically as an educator who is in a union. A lot of us, especially in Minneapolis, there's conversations around, the school to prison pipeline. There's conversations around how the carceral system is impacting our kids. Particularly if you have family that's incarcerated, you brought up a perfect example of, because you're not paid what you are owed, you can't pay to take care of your child like you should, because you're not getting the wages you deserve to be able to do that. And I feel like an important angle for us to talk with members about is like, these are the communities we are present in. These are the families and the students that we work with. These are fellow workers. I think making those connections with our coworkers around how it's all intersected in that way, getting to help them understand like why this should be a priority and issue that we should be focused on. I think as much as we can as unionized workers, making connections to what is already in people's frameworks of what is familiar. Like even when I think about the fact that when people get out of prison and then you can't get certain jobs, it's like, well, I think a lot of people have this idea, well, even though I don't fully agree with like that prisons are just, period, but like your average person believes that, oh, you did your time, you go out in the world, you should be able to start over. And that reality doesn't exist. And I think there's a lot of people understanding that it's like you can organize that solidarity to push back against that.
Yeah, the collateral consequences that come with incarceration or even just conviction of a crime are just, it's never ending.
Yeah.
Because it's not like written in stone, like, oh, for 8 to 5 years or 5 to 8 years, you'll be ostracized from the community, you'll be distrusted, this and no. With you, it might be, hey, you forgave me yesterday. She might forgive me 20 years from now, and she's a landlord. You might forgive me, you know what I mean? And it changes with every single person dependent upon their experiences and the way that they've been conditioned through our society. So that's one of the things that breaking that will be monumental. If we can get that mind change and that heart change in Minnesota.
So he made a very valid point. I like when you said that going to, I think you said this, going to the people that actually own the business, like Mencor. Mencor is a big one that's inside of the prisons. Going to Mencor and, boycotting them, we have to stand up somewhere, make them make a move. Going to them and telling them they have to stop sending the work there. Because I think a lot of the work comes from Mencor. Right.
Y'all got me on the balloons for real. I was shook. I can tell you this. I found out that Driscoll's was underpaying the migrant workers, and I ain't ate a Driscoll strawberry since. All right?
I would just say,
Go ahead.
what happened to you, brothers, sisters, that's criminal. Seems to me that the profiteers of this system need to be held accountable, just like they try to hold, folks that are incarcerated accountable. And putting faces to that, I think, would be important, and it would be shameful. Like they're living, the 1% life with no accountability to where they're getting their money, and I'm sure their circles would appreciate to know who's profiting off of this. And I think that if we organize, you get workers to organize, but certain rallies outside of events where they're opening museums and all this stuff where the fat cats like to hang out and pat themselves on the back, understanding if we can point out that there are those amongst them that are criminals in profiting off of prison labor, I think that would be shameful. I think that they would start to feel some of the shame that they try to cast upon folks that have had mistakes in their lives. I think it would also start, nothing changes Fortune 500 more than bad publicity. They care about that.
Oh, yeah.
It'll begin to change the way they do business, I think. So if we started to identify those folks that are actually making money on this and here in the community, and started putting their faces on flyers and began to do rallies in front of where they like to socialize, I think we can make a difference.
Wow,
With
that's
respect,
good.
and then have quote unquote respectable union folk there, be like, oh, teachers are there? Oh, okay, wow, and that would change people's minds.
Yeah.
I
That's
wanted to
good.
follow up kind of on the point that you made, Jessica. I think, I've been doing work at the intersection of labor and prisons and policing for most of my adult life, I guess. And so I've had like conversations with hundreds of union members, if not thousands, about prisons, policing, incarcerated folks. And I will say that I have never personally, there's no other issue where, at times in the past, maybe immigration was this issue, but where you experience a lack of willingness to go there in terms of solidarity, I think with a lot of folks, it really takes a lot of agitation. So, and I think we gotta be prepared for that too.
Yep.
That's not like you said, solidarity is the key, and also like how do we build solidarity within labor? We can't just take it for granted. I think workers are used to seeing other workers in the outside free world as, potential candidates for solidarity. But you really have to like break down a lot of people's like internal programming and like the correction officer inside their head, to get people to like recognize the humanity of incarcerated folks. And one approach that I found useful, every worker is familiar with the tactics that bosses use to divide us, right, in the workplace. And there is truly no segment of our society that is more deliberately divided off, like literally disappeared from the rest of the population than incarcerated folks, right? People are pulled straight up out of their communities, often urban communities, sent to, rural locations with extremely limited access to their loved ones, their neighbors, their coworkers, everybody who was in their lives before. And that's a deliberate strategy. And I think it's on like such a bigger scale than what people experience in their day-to-day lives in the outside world and in their workplaces, but the roots of that are present there too. And so, I don't know, in my experience, that's been like a basis for trying to kind of form some of these connections of solidarity and just like really agitate people. Why is it that you feel this way about incarcerated people? What are how is this system set up to deliberately make you not see them as your sibling, not see them as someone worthy of your care or your solidarity, right? But you really do have to agitate people. So just to say that, like, we gotta be prepared. The fight is gonna be internal too, honestly.
So what's your name?
Amy.
Amy, nice to meet you, I'm Jazzy. You kind of segued right into what I was gonna say. So the elephant I think needs to be addressed in the room is anti-blackness. The reason why that is happening is because of anti-blackness. It is not an issue in which what we know the roots of which it is derived from, people want to deal with yet. If we look into our labor world, brothers and sisters in this room, it is not very diverse in these trades. It makes it easy to swallow. With that being said, one of the things I think we can do, people who are not black and brown folks, is to get your communities to understand that their people are slaves too.
That part.
Right? They are locked up and they are considered to be a slave while they are locked up. So they are not exempt to the conditions in which this derived from. You have to humanize all of this. But the reason why it is hard to take it on is most definitely rooted in anti-blackness. And so that's just kind of what I wanted to say. And so like, I have been calling on, if we have trade labor partners who have white brothers and sisters who are incarcerated, they need to know they're slaves. That title once does and did belong to a group of people intentionally and still does predominantly in the prisons. However, you are now becoming part of the thing that your ancestors helped create, which is not right, and it is now affecting us as a whole. But how do we get them to see that they are now a part of the thing that is inflicting other people that they thought they once didn't look like, now it is inflicting you? And so it is easy to swallow or stray away from that because, hey, right? That's not a sexy issue. right? But we have to turn it into one. We have to turn it into something that we see all of the humanity in it. And so that's just what I want to say, is just like that we have to deal with that. We have to deal with the roots in which it's derived, who's impacted, and we need more, if we want to call them white allies, family members, whoever, to start speaking up, because there are white folks who are locked up. And they are slaves. 45%. Those are slaves. Do their families know they're slaves by definition? Probably not. A lot of the information that's being shared here tonight, some of it's even new to me now in this moment. We have to spread this information so that people understand it, because if you don't know what you don't know. And so,
You'll figure it out when they get pimped by Centaurus. Is that what it's called, the phone company? Syntax, Centaurus? Centaurus. The pimp. Nothing's for free.
And kind of on that level, the enslavement of people in prison is really one of, I guess you could say broadly, three main avenues of attack that have been increasingly used against the entire U.S. working class since especially the 1980s is really a point of acceleration. If you look at the prison population in the U.S., it just jumps in the late 70s through to the 80s with these so-called tough on crime policies. The same era that increasingly we saw the outsourcing of jobs from the U.S. to former colonized nations in a state of neocolonialism. The same time that in the construction industry, we saw a huge reliance on companies of exploiting the hell out of undocumented immigrants. And all of these are forms of exploitation where racism is used, whether that be the racism of colonialism in the case of outsourcing, the racism of anti-blackness, in the case of prison slavery, the racism against mostly Latino immigrants in the case of the super exploitation of undocumented people. These are all three forms by which they use racism to hyper-exploit one part of the workforce. But because we're in a competitive economy, the hyper-exploitation of any one part of the workforce drags down the entire workforce in a race to the bottom. That whole thing, an injury to one is an injury to all, isn't just like a saying. That's a really obvious piece of material analysis that you have to accept, because you can't effectively struggle for yourself if you don't. And even prior to the Civil War, people who were thinking about this among white working populations had to understand that the institution of slavery in the antebellum period was a serious threat to their own economic interests, in addition to being a moral monstrosity, in addition to being unacceptable to do to any human being, was also a direct threat to their own economic well-being. And people need to understand that these three forms of racist exploitation are similarly degrading all of these gains that the working class made and are part of a huge decades-long counteroffensive against workers, and need to be confronted not just as an act of moral charity to the incarcerated, but as an act of solidarity.
Go ahead.
I'd just like to offer this, be quiet. I think it's a really important discussion. And not to take away from minimum wage in prison. But these brothers and sisters are gonna get out.
Yes.
What do they have to look forward to?
Yes,
That's a big concern for me. I've worked for the Public Defender's Office here in Henry County, the Legal Rights Center, the Council on Crime and Justice. And I've worked with these people and I've gone into prisons and worked. And as a person who's been in prison, that's the thing I think about. What am I gonna do when I get out? What does a 50-cent an hour job offer me? Unity. We need to have unity. I'm imploring the labor unions and whoever else is involved here to come together and approach this problem. I talked about a reform law. I'd like to pass it on to somebody. I'd like you to see. It's gonna impact some people, not all people, but it gives a person a chance who comes out to get a decent job, to earn a living. These people have children. How are they gonna raise their families? So I think unity is gonna be key in this. I'm glad I was invited to it. Because I feel like I'm fighting this thing all by myself.
No.
And I know I'm not, just listening to the people in here. So, yeah, I think it's wrong to pay people 50 cents. But those same people are gonna get out. What are they gonna do? What's out there for them?
Yes.
So if somebody can give me an email address or something, I'd like to send that to you. So you can take a look at it and see what we're proposing, hopefully in the legislature this session. And there are politicians and legislators that see the common sense in this.
Yes.
Some of them have children that have committed criminal offenses and can't get jobs by their own admission. So if someone can get it to me, I greatly appreciate it. I think this is very well worthwhile effort here to bring this to the attention of people, because somebody said it, most people don't know what's going on. Most of us, unless you go in there, you don't know what the heck is going on, or unless you have people who've been there who can tell you what's going on in these prisons. So, anyway.
I just wanted to comment on what you were talking about, and how do we make this relevant and humanized to other people. And I experienced that in my family. My mother is like everybody else. She has the same, I'm less than, worth less, and things like that, because of my lifestyle of crime, of drug addiction and things like that prior to my incarceration. And anytime there's a bump with the law or anything like that, it's he's back to doing it, and it's just, and I had to tell her one day, I was like, Mom, imagine you were kidnapped. Imagine a gang of dudes came with firepower and yanked you out of your car and smuggled you away to a locked facility. And this could be anywhere in the world, because you don't know. You didn't get to see how you got there. It was the middle of the night, and it's brick, and they only come by once an hour to see if you're alive. They don't even call your family because they don't even want ransom. You don't know when you're gonna get out, Mom. And I tried to tell it to her in the way of somebody who was taken, maybe one of the held for ransom in South America or something like that. I put it that way, and she was like, "Oh, well," I was like, and that's how traumatic being incarcerated is. You are yanked out of your existence. You are yanked away from every person you know, out of everything that you have set up in life, your whole routine, where you live, your clothes, your swagger, everything is taken away, and you're put in a concrete box with other people. You have no idea who they are. You would never probably associate with them in your life. I mean, you do eventually, because you realize, hey, we've both been abducted. We've both been through this traumatic experience. And then think about the PTSD that comes with that. Not really having community ties or ties to people, because, hey, I could get transferred tomorrow. I could get put in the hole. They might just move me to another unit. So even becoming real good friends with this guy is what's the point? Because tomorrow he might be gone. They might ship him out, and I get shipped out. And then when I get out, I'm never going to see him again. He's from Moorhead or from, and it's this loose social network that you have. Then you get out and you try to socialize like normal people and have real intimate bonds of connection. And it's difficult at first. It's trying. A lot of guys fail, and it's that failure that can push you over the edge too. There's a lot that goes into it to humanize this thing, because it's a system of dehumanization. So every single part dehumanizes us in some way, religiously, emotionally, spiritually, economically, all that. So.
That is so true. Coming back out is so difficult to connect. I was only in for 2 years, and just coming back out, my family seeing this blank stare in me because it's like I'm there, but I'm not there. I got to get back there. And speaking of that PTSD, wow, yes, you literally have nightmares of that place every day. The vision will never leave your head. To this day, I've been home for 3 years, and it's still it comes through my head. I'm like, oh, I hate that place. The thought of somebody telling me when to shower, to get up, to go to bed, to when to eat and what to eat. Wow, that right there is traumatic by itself. So yeah, I feel bad for the people that's in there, like the man said. Where do they go from here when they release? They're lost because, like I say, when you come back into society, when I went back to my family, somebody that I was around my entire life, it felt real odd, and they seen it in me. They understood everything they seen. They say you're just blank, and I felt it. They seen it, and it was very weird.
I think about how you're describing the trauma of incarceration and the difficulty of reacclimating to life outside. But I also know while you're in there that maintaining your sense of humanity and your sense of self and the dignity that you would feel as a worker could be helped by having a decent living wage while you're in there. Money don't solve everything, but I know the insult personally of not having money or a wage that's commensurate with what I think I should have earned. And I almost feel as if it is a soul wound, a deliberate insult to say you ain't worth shit when they give you such a small amount. That is a deliberate insult to the worker that is incarcerated. And so that all of us as society should not participate in that cruel and unusual punishment of underpaying, in fact, enslaving our fellow citizens. So I invite you all to join incarcerated workers, helping organize, maybe joining IWOC, calling your legislature, supporting the bill, doing all that you can with your fellow laborers to start contacting folk. We love our coalitions. We love being in alignment. Whether you're in there or out there, people who like outlaw country and the good old folk songs about being incarcerated and being on the line, all of us are workers. We're all workers. And we need to start showing that solidarity. Because a temporary sentence, whether it was 2 years or 20 years, should not mean to be subjected to slavery. And that is slavery by another name. Minnesota needs to change. Not here in this so-called North Star state. We need to do better. And I believe if labor is willing to get behind this, we can. I sure appreciate y'all being here. I want y'all, thank y'all so much for also being here. Thank you so, so much.
One more thing.
Yep.
We do have a day on the Hill to End Slavery in Minnesota on May 1st.
May 1st.
We have a sign up with the QR code right there if you want to scan to RSVP. Please invite your folks. other thing is the Racial and Economic Justice Committee of the AFL-CIO in the state of Minnesota has endorsed this campaign and has sent it to the exec board to endorse. So we're hoping that the executive council, or whatever it's called, I think that's what it's called, of the AFL-CIO will be also endorsing this. And we also want that happens, fingers crossed. That's an open invitation to all the unions and all the people who are in unions to say, hey, the AFL-CIO endorsed this, we should too. So I just want to flag that, and it hasn't happened yet, so we're not counting chickens yet, but that's supposed to happen this March. So, yeah, shout out.
Thank you, David.
What about the gala?
Oh, yeah, say that too.
No, I don't know the
Oh,
details.
yeah, there's also,
I'm just going.
you know people, we have a gala at the Guthrie on May 17th. To raise money, and to get businesses and legislators to support this. We are also looking for people to pledge jobs and pay people real wages while they're incarcerated.
Oh,
Oh, like what job? Sorry, I don't know.
So it could be remote
Oh,
employment.
I got it. Okay.
So we're talking to nonprofits about having remote fellowships
Oh,
with
I
people
got
in
it.
prison. It could be distribution work. It could be, I mean, it could be factory work. I mean, it could be all sorts of work. You know what I mean? Because that takes the cost away from the state and puts it on, and it also puts people where hopefully you work in a prison, you can also work in the community. So, yeah.